with your teeth.
All right, you want to count backwards from 10. 10, 9.
This is the kind of activity that separates the just friends prom dates from the real dates, and dozens of just friends stood around the edges of the hall in various states of discomfort.
3, 2, 1.
100 kneeling teenage boys bring their faces up against the slightly sweaty thighs of their dates, grip multicolored garters with their teeth, and drag them off the leg. It's a shocking and amazing sight, but when I ask teachers about it later, they all say, "Where have you been? They've done this for years." At homecoming, apparently, things get even more explicit.
All right. Okay, let's move the chairs and we'll have a slow dance.
As evening wore on, George and Carla, a couple that didn't dance, did go out for a couple of slow numbers.
I don't want to get everyone to the floor.
Later, when it was time to leave, they picked up their prom favors and took some balloons from the centerpieces and joined another couple, Mark and Charlotte, in Mark's father's Ford Tempo. They searched for a radio station.
Put it on CKC.
Jeez, that's what a whole bunch of hippie rock. Oh man, it's a bunch of hippie rock.
I like it.
9.
All right.
No, ma'am. I spell it M. Hey. Yeah. Ma'am.
Everybody pitched in $1 for gas. Carlo waved at people in other cars and inhaled the helium from her prom balloons.
Mighty bunny.
They argued about directions, discussed who Winona Ryder is going out with these days. And finally, after nearly an hour, we ended up at a party. A pretty lively party, but mostly we stood around outside.
Where's my liquor? In the store. Matt, where's my liquor?
Charlotte repeated this about, 20 times. Nobody else seemed too interested in getting drunk. But finally, someone organized a liquor run.
Are they gonna sell to you?
They'll sell to me. If they don't sell to me, they'll sell to someone else. What do you want?
Kiwi lime Mad Dog, baby.
Mad Dog? What kind?
Kiwi lime.
Kiwi lime?
Wait, he needs some.
Give me that 5-bag. Here, I'll give it 10.
One thing you forget when you're not a teenager is how much time teenagers spend just standing around, waiting to get organized, waiting for everyone to show up, waiting for the person buying liquor to return. Percentage-wise, this was the largest part of the evening. Invariably, during this time, someone starts to get on someone else's nerves. For Charlotte and George, the feeling was mutual.
She always yaps, man. She never shuts up. You know, she just keeps on talking and talking. It's like, why don't you shut up? And it's like the tone of voice she uses too. She like the whiny tone of voice, you know. It's like I don't want to hear it. I had to put up with her when she first started going to Taft, man, and I hated it then and I hate it now. It's like something that's bringing me down, you know.
Go on. You're coming with us?
Around 1:30, a decision was made to go to the beach, one of Chicago's downtown Lake Michigan beaches. And after much debate and 4 attempts to get a dozen people into cars, we finally drove to Belmont Harbor and walked out to the big rocks on the water. Everyone stared at the lake. The city lights made the clouds glow orange.
Yeah.
In the distance, you could see some fog, and the lights of the water pumping.
Don't want to stress you out.
Those
It's
pumping
like
stations,
pointing out
man.
how
How
lucky
do you
you
like to
are
work
that
out
one
there? You
line.
get to work out there for 3 days, 3-day shifts. You out there, and they feed you. And you work and you get paid, and you just hang around there. And it's like a real cool city job that you get paid through the ass for.
It'd be so scary to be in a boat, like, you know, it's so dark.
You know, unless I'm really smashed, I really feel uneasy around open water.
Did you say you felt uneasy about what?
Water, open water.
By the lake, man.
Oh, man. It's space. It's free, man. It's empty. It's the best, man. It's the best you can go.
Mark then launches into a fairly dire speech, which, coming from him, is surprising. He's college-bound, a good student, on the football team, usually easygoing and self-confident.
Seriously, man, there is no freedom in this goddamn place, man. There's always some cop or somebody asking what you're doing there, because there's always
After
somebody
this stop,
who owns
it's
the
direct
place.
home, okay?
They're always gonna come to you and ask you, you know, especially when you're underage. Then they're gonna really get on your back, giving you lectures about what you're not supposed to do, what you're supposed to do.
Claire and Charlotte go off for cigarettes. Carla takes her shoes off. We talk about this and that. And then we look behind us and see the blue lights through the trees.
What's that?
No evening like this can be complete without a run-in with the police. They're perhaps 100 yards away in the parking lot in their squad car.
What, they getting out? Are they getting out?
The police hover there a few minutes, put a ticket on one kid's car, and drive off. No big deal. Next stop, naturally, is an all-night restaurant. By the time we hold the big plastic Denny's menus in our hands, it's 4 in the morning.
You ready to order?
I want salad.
Okay, for you. Still, I'm going to have the floated again slam.
They gossiped. They floated pleasantly from topic to topic. Fate had handed them a prom, and they knew they were supposed to stay out all night, and they kept wandering from place to place, waiting for something to happen. Nothing much did, but nothing bad did either.
It's starting to get light outside.
We're gonna get going soon. I'm gonna sleep all day.
I can't sleep all day.
Back in the car, George said that the best moment of the prom was when he got to slow dance with Carla. Mark said it was when he missed getting a ticket from those cops. Charlotte said it was when she looked around at all the people at the prom and realized that she no longer had to return to Taft High School.
Lean on me. Can I be your friend? Somebody. Alright, I don't know the song as good as I thought I did.
Second. 2:30. Is that good?
That 4.
It's 4.5 hours.
Sorry.
So every year for the past 70 years,
Not, but I'm
the
just
third
saying that
weekend in
wasn't
May,
3 hours.
all the high schools in Racine,
It was in the
Wisconsin,
morning, I
hold their
promise.
proms. On that same night, after all the proms have ended, the kids from all 7 schools drive a parade route through town in convertibles and limos and antique cars, ice cream trucks and semis to the post-prom party, which in Racine is actually bigger than the actual prom itself. Hosted by the local Rotary Club, it goes from 8:30 at night until 3 the next morning. People set up lawn chairs to watch this procession of cars, this parade. It is a huge, huge deal. And then it got even bigger. Wendy Dorr tells what happened.
The good people of Racine loved their prom, and they were always looking for ways to make it better. And so, they added to it. A force even more powerful than the prom itself. They added live television coverage.
Last year, 60,000 eyes were watching. A rite of passage. 7 schools. 1 great location. 1 night only. It's prom. Prom, live. Saturday, May 19th, 9:30 p.m. What will you be wearing?
It's a really, really incredible atmosphere in there with an $8,000 laser show, $5,000 to $10,000 for the balloons and flowers.
Greg Haskins has been running the Rotary Club's post-prom for the past couple of years. He was voted into the job by his fellow Rotarians simply because he is 27 years old and by far the youngest Rotarian in Racine. And he looks young. On prom night, he has to wear a special badge so the high school kids know not to ask him to dance.
There's screaming people, the red carpet, television crews, 2 talented, like the host and hostess that interview you when you walk through the door, and just like Joan Crawford, that's her name, right?
Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers, just like Joan Rivers when you walk through, what are you wearing? That's a beautiful talk show, that's a nice dress.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Time Warner Cable's coverage of the 2001 Rotary Post-Prom Parade, live from Festival Hall on Racine's Lakefront. My name is Deb Silverson.
When I was walking down the red carpet, I felt like you feel like a celebrity.
Zach Fishbane was a senior at Horlick High this year.
And there's fans, people of all ages, there's bleachers, packed bleachers, hundreds of people around the rival area, and people screaming your name, taking pictures, holding their hands out. It feels like the paparazzis are like following me around with television, cameras in your face.
What did you do before you got here?
We went out to the country club and ate with the rest of the audience.
The whole school did.
Okay, so you all ate together and then came down here.
There's people on the left of the carpet interviewing and watching all these limousines and friends come in. Everyone feels like a celebrity. Everyone.
Fuck her asshole.
sees everyone else as a celebrity. Everybody is everybody's best friend at post-prom. You walk in and you see the strobe lights flashing, and the celebrity feeling is even multiplied when you get there, and that feeling doesn't go away until, well, I still have it 3 weeks later, and I'm still feeling like the celebrity watching it all again on television. So as long as you keep watching it and everyone knows how big of a deal it is, it really isn't downplayed. You know, once you kind of lose that feeling, you think about prom and start talking about it with again, and people want to hear about it. People who didn't go and have been watching it have so many questions for you. Did you do this? Did you see this person? What kind of music did they play? You are the center of attention when prom is a topic. So you maintain that celebrity feeling.
Here's what it looks like to the home viewer. Because this is low-budget local cable programming, it's mostly just one camera shot. Couples enter the festival hall, passing 2 by 2 in front of the camera, woo-hooing and high-nomming straight into the camera, one after the next, and this goes on for 4 hours. In Zach's house, this footage has become a kind of video wallpaper. While I was there interviewing him, a copy of the cable broadcast played the whole time in the living room. Sometimes a family member would drop out of the conversation to stare at it for a while. Now and then, Zach's mom, Susan, would call our attention to the screen.
Here he comes. Look how handsome. We have been so excited with it. We've watched it numerous times. It's great. I mean, we, play it back all the time. It's right in, we have 2 copies of it. It's in 2 TVs, and every time you watch it, you see somebody different, and it's so much fun. You run into the parents and the kids in the city, to say, and your pink dress and your matching tux was just great, and it's great.
If you ask the local television studios what's the biggest,
Again, Craig Haskins.
the Oscars, Super Bowl, or prom, they would hands down say prom, because it's the highest rated anything in town. And that's a good way to judge people's interests as to what they're watching on TV.
Proms everywhere are all about hype. So it's no surprise that once you have a prom that's a TV show, that the ratings would be hyped too. The cable company's commercial says that 60,000 eyes were watching the prom. But by that, they actually mean 30,000 viewers, 2 eyes per viewer. And really, even that number is just a guess. For sure, one person who was not watching the prom was Kirsten Hipsky. I spoke with her at her job at Desmond's Formal Wear, a tuxedo rental store at the Regency Mall. It is also safe to say that Kirsten was the only person in the mall that night who was reading Plato's Phaedrus for fun.
I'm rereading it. It's the last thing I read in school, and it was really wonderful, and I wanted to keep reading it. And also I can practice my Greek.
You didn't go to prom?
No, I didn't. Prom is a beautiful illusion. People here indulge in the thought that maybe they're not in the place that they are. And Racine is not a glamorous place. And I mean, I know I'm part of it.
If you're someone who hates the prom, there's no better way to refuel your hatred than by working at a tuck shop. Kirsten says everyone at the store despises the prom. The worst part being when the kids bring their sweaty suits back.
Sometimes they'll come up stuffed into a little grocery bag, tied really tight, and you have to pretty much disinfect the whole thing and pick it up very lightly. The boss here got fungus underneath her fingernails one time dealing with someone's socks.
Do you get suits with grass stains?
Oh yeah, grass, puke, mud. For people that say that prom is there for people to feel special from their lives, I don't know about that. I mean, find me one high school senior who really needs an ego boost. It's the time to be cocky and prideful, and I think that it's kind of indulgent of that. And if they say that they feel like a celebrity, it doesn't surprise me at all, because they do get treated like celebrities, even though they, their personality might be less than beautiful. And I'm certainly glad I didn't take part in it.
To truly enjoy the Racine prom, and maybe to enjoy any prom, you have to be the sort of person who enjoys the hype leading up to it. Zach certainly did, for basically
I guess there's
his whole life.
like a Cybertruck somewhere in Morristown.
I have been watching
a
prom on
Cybertruck in
television.
Morristown.
What's a Cybertruck?
Every spring,
Ugly Tesla truck.
every May,
Yeah.
and it's only natural. Middle schoolers, elementary school, grade school, high school,
I think
all
Matt told me
ages
that,
are
like,
watching.
he actually saw it.
So every year,
Yeah, and
we
I saw
watch
it on like a Facebook
and
post somewhere.
As a kid, I thought I was gonna come in a helicopter with a yellow tuxedo. Actually, this year there was a kid in a yellow tuxedo, but no helicopters, unfortunately. Watching it on TV, I never realized how glorious this festivity really was until I actually was a part of it.
Pretty here, isn't it?
I mean, it seems great. You look so forward to it, and it was even better when I got there because it was the real thing. I was experiencing it. The realization and the fact that I knew I was actually there and no longer looking forward to it made it that much better.
Prom, after all, is just a dance, plus a whole lot of hype. Racine understands this so well that it's possible they've created the greatest prom in the world. They've hyped it to the point that when I asked a bunch of junior high school girls if they were looking forward to the prom, all of them looked at me as if I'd just asked them if they were in fact of the human species. Because, they explained, by the time they reached senior year, who knows how big it could get.
Wendy Dorr. These days she's an executive producer and editor at New York Times Audio. Since this story first aired in 2001, the prom has grown from 7 to 9 area high schools. Special thanks to OVO Incorporated, an arts collective in New York. It's from them that we heard about the prom in Racine. We made a film about it called World's Best Prom. They were very helpful.
Okay, for the next one.
Our program today was a rerun produced by Starlee Kind and myself with Alex Bloomberg, Wendy Dorr.
Human Spectacle.
Huh?
Human Spectacle, it's called.
Okay.
Do you know for 12 months in a row, one streaming service has been watched on TV more than any other? According to Nielsen, it's YouTube. But this isn't your usual streamer. This is where game day fans become 24/7 fans, where you can find your favorite artist, plus every fan cover and live show in existence. With millions of creators, billions of fans, and all the content we love most, there's only one YouTube.
In October 2003, the guy was brought into the psychiatric emergency room at Bellevue Hospital in New York City. Dr. Joel Gold was the chief attending psychiatrist that day. Saw him.
He felt that his life was essentially a reality show, that he's been recorded for years, that everyone in his life was an actor reading from a script, and he came to New York essentially to test this hypothesis.
He thought that maybe 9/11 was faked, just to get a reaction out of it on reality TV.
And if he came to New York, and if the World Trade Centers were still standing, he would know that that was in fact the case. If in fact they had been destroyed, then he would admit that perhaps he was delusional.
But once he got to New York, instead of visiting the Twin Towers, he walked into the United Nations and asked for asylum. Asylum from a TV show. It was filming him without his consent, 24 hours a day, which, is how he ended up in Bellevue. Dr. Gold didn't think much of this. People show up at Bellevue with lots of weird delusions all the time. And then a few months later, another guy walks in with the same idea, that he was being filmed 24/7 and broadcast around the world. And the second guy, like the first one, mentioned film. The 1998 movie, The Truman Show.
Both of them named The Truman Show, by name. They said, my life is like The Truman Show.
Truman is played by Jim Carrey. He's filmed all day, every day, on a program that is broadcast to billions of people around the globe. His wife, his best friend, everybody around him is an actor. Everybody knows it's a TV show but him, until one day he starts to see clues that make him suspicious. And just to be clear, you're not saying that The Truman Show necessarily triggered this. Like, people watch The Truman Show and suddenly something in their brain snaps.
Yeah, exactly. On the contrary, I think it's just when people are becoming psychotic, perhaps if you've seen the movie and that's kicking around your head, you might say, yes, this is what's happening to me.
If your psychosis includes both paranoia and a sense that you are very, very important, what psychiatrists call grandiosity. 30 years ago, you might think that the CIA or the KGB is watching you all the time. These days, you have another possible explanation: reality TV. A few months later, a third patient showed up with the same delusion, and a few months after that, a fourth. Dr. Gold started calling it the Truman Show delusion. He's just written a book about it with his brother Ian called Suspicious Minds. In one case in the book, a patient, super smart guy, an academic, very altruistic, believed that he was part of an elaborate game show, and the world was watching him and betting on everything that he did.
And this was a really fun thing that everyone would be doing online, and the monies collected would go to charities all over the world, and that every single human being on Earth would be given some amount of money, and the world would be, bettered for it.
One of the things that he included in his delusion, you write in your book, is that he has the thought that he actually was the mastermind who created this game show that he was on, and that he controlled it, and he knew the rules when he had originally created the show, but somehow he had forgotten that and all the rules, which is so interesting because, of course, it's true. Like, he did invent the game show, and the only fact that he's missing is that it's not real. It's all in his own head.
That's an interesting way of putting it. It is kind of fantastical
and heartbreaking.
It is.
Like, part of him knows he made it up, but he can't grasp the whole reality.
He does not remember. At one point, he suggests that he told his best friends, "This is what I'm going to do. You are going to run the show, but you will now hypnotize me, and I will forget what we're talking about now, so we can do this really good deed for humanity."
Some of these patients respond to treatment, some don't, same as with other delusions and psychoses. But Dr. Gold says that if they do come back to reality,
some feel great relief if they've been persecuted. It's quite embarrassing if you think about it. Every moment of your life, when you're in the shower, literally everything is filmed. So they feel quite good about it. At the same time, there's a certain sadness that they're not particularly important.
Do they miss being the most famous person on the world?
No question. There are some who feel that that's a huge loss. At the same time, I think they return to the notion that they're mentally ill, which in and of itself is an unfortunate and sad thing.
Psychosis aside, I think all this illustrates so clearly, there's a downside and an upside to being on stage for the whole world to see, a human spectacle against your will. And today in our program, we have people who became just that. They have an experience, so few of us have, that we all get to see from afar. They are on display for everybody, and not because they chose it. What that feels like, the positive parts and the negative side, and the real life reality of the whole thing. From WBEZ Chicago, it's This American Life. I'm Eric Glass. Stay with us. Ekwan, I am the eggplant, cuckoo kachoo. In the TV genre that's devoted to pure human spectacle, reality TV, people fight drunkenly in hot tubs, they eat live spiders for money, but none of that can hold a candle to this show. A show that aired in Japan all the way back in 1998. It was called Susanoo Denpa Shonen, and one of its segments in particular got the attention of one of our producers, Stephanie Fu. She put this story together a few years back. Today's show was a rerun.
The segment is called Sweepstakes Life. It starts the way a lot of these shows do, with a bunch of people at an audition. One guy beats out everyone else. He's 22 years old, a comedian just starting out in his career. His name is Nasubi.
Nasubi!
Nasubi means eggplant in Japanese, a nickname he got because he has a long face. The producers tell him they have a unique idea for a show, something they've never tried before. It may or may not air, but if it does, he'll be the star. He'll be famous. The producers blindfold him, put him in a car, and take him to a small apartment. Then they tell him to take his clothes off. That wipes the grin off his face.
It wasn't just my personal sort of shame or sort of issues about nudity per se. My dad is a cop. And when I first announced that for, my career choice was going to be comedy, he was not thrilled. And we had to go through some things to get him around to the idea. He said, the one thing that I must never do in public is strip.
Oh no.
So there I was. And then this guilt towards, I was breaking the promise to my father as publicly as possible.
But he strips. He grabs a pillow, holds it over his groin, and looks around the room. There's no chair in the room, no bed, just a coffee table, and magazines, tons of magazines. The producers tell him that from now on, if he wants food, clothes, he will have to win them by entering sweepstakes in those magazines. They give him postcards to send in for prize drawings. He'll be freed from the apartment after he wins 1 million yen, or $10,000 worth of prizes. Until then, he isn't allowed any outside contact with the world. He can't call his family, he can't talk to friends. And oh, they tell him, don't forget to put tapes in this little camera here every 2 hours and record yourself. We'll come pick up the tapes once a day. And then they say, all right, later. Nasubi screams, are you for real? Nasubi says he'd signed no contract, but he didn't have anything better to do, so he sat down and wrote, and soon was entering 200 to 300 contests a day. And while he waited for prizes to arrive, he had no food. Nasubi got frighteningly thin very quickly. You could see the sharp angles of his collarbones.
Well, starvation is a good word for it. The staff got together and would give me basically a very simple little bread each day. So I had bread and water essentially for the first 2 weeks. But then as soon as the results started to come in, then that stopped and everything shifted over entirely to things that I could win through sweepstakes.
After 2 weeks, he finally won some sugary drinks. A few days after that, he won a bag of rice. When the postman dropped it off, it was like Christmas. Nasubi danced like a madman. Were you trying to be a good performer and be funny when you were doing that, or was it just really genuine joy?
Well, initially, of course, I was there as a performer and I wanted to be a comedian, but somewhere in the middle, the whole business of staying alive became my full-time occupation. So I think what you saw, if you saw any dancing, it was really just a human being expressing, great joy.
So he danced for this package of rice, but then he stopped short. He realized he didn't own a pot to cook the rice in. But after a couple days of failed attempts, he figured out that if he put some rice in an empty drink container and left it near his single gas burner, it eventually turned into a kind of porridge.
And I could eat delicious rice every day. I remember how good that felt, and then there was the slow trepidation as it started to vanish, and then it ran out, and the only food substitute that I had been able to win
I don't know. This might be way too long for me to go take. I can't take
after, let's say 6 weeks of eating dog food, when then I was able to get more rice, and it arrived, I really felt a kind of special kind of joy at being able to sort of return to humanity in a sense and taste delicious rice again.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Are you mad at me?
No, it's just we didn't need to go across the bridge twice.
Back then, there was a kind of sweepstakes mania in Japan. The country was in the middle of a terrible recession, and some wondered whether one could subsist entirely on their winnings. And so when Sweepstakes Life debuted, almost immediately after Nasubi was first shut in the room, it was an instant hit. Nasubi had no idea. He didn't even know he was on TV.
He believed what the producers had told him, that he'd record some videotapes and maybe someday it would end up on the air. On television, Nasabi's groin was hidden by a purple cartoon eggplant that floated around as he moved. Everything he did was accentuated with ridiculous boing boing sound effects, and puffy rainbow letters floated above his head. But these effects popped up just as often when Nasabi was despondent. The show took every chance to poke fun at him, whether he was muttering to himself, dancing around, or doing terrible headstands. You know, the dumb stuff you do when you think no one's watching. Except people were. For context, in the US, Game of Thrones usually has around 9 million viewers. Nasabi had 16 million, in a country less than half the size of ours. People thought Nasabi was the funniest comedy act they'd ever seen. And I have to admit, as a viewer, once in a while, when Nasabi got something really awesome in the mail, I couldn't help it. I laughed too. Even though I knew how much he was suffering, I couldn't help it. His unfiltered joy is contagious. Though, as a foreigner watching Sweepstakes Life, most of the time when the studio audience cracked up, I felt sick. I thought, what could possibly be funny about this?
I mean, that was maybe a time when, you know, Japan was going through some things and they needed to sort of do that. Roughly 50 years of prosperity has finally come to a close, and people really uncertain about their futures. You know, I think people just tended to watch the show and say, you know, I got it bad, but look at poor Nasabi, you know, he's got it worse. Now there's a lot more awareness of the weak and of people who, you know, need extra support. And I don't think the average Japanese, they would think it was funny that there was a guy, you know, naked in a room somewhere.
Yeah.
Nasabi won hundreds of prizes, but many of them were useless to him. Spice Girls tickets, for example, or a TV with no cable, or a bicycle. He sent away for clothes, but never won anything he could wear. He was naked the entire time he was in that room, for the entire show. And as the weeks went by, then months, Nasabi started to look less and less sane. He grew a beard, his hair was wild, and he started talking differently, slower. He'd make really creepy faces into the camera. At one point, he won some toys and he started talking to them. He took a stuffed seal for a walk around the apartment. An action figure became his sensei, and he got life advice from it. And if right now you are sitting there thinking, how in God's good name is this possible? Why was this allowed? Imprisonment, solitary confinement, starvation. Watching, I thought, this isn't a reality TV show. It's a psychological experiment made public. Plus, boing boings, of course. Was there anything preventing you from backing out at that point? Like, was the door locked?
No, there was no lock on the door. And producers later asked me, so why didn't you escape? I was naked, so I would have had to go outside naked and seek help. But I don't think that's what kept me in there. The only thing I really have to say is that I said I'd do it, and I do what I say.
That was it? The only reason? I kept asking him, but wait, really? Why?
There's a phrase, Yamato Damashi, the Japanese spirit, which is just that you sort of stick through, you endure things. You know, when you're given something, whether it's easy or whether it's hard, you just really do, you know, you're obliged to follow it through.
Nasabi did finally win $10,000 worth of prizes. It took him almost an entire year, but at last, he'd completed the challenge. When he reached his goal, producers didn't tell him anything about it. Instead, they snuck into his apartment in the middle of the night, put a blindfold on him, took him out to a car, gave him clothes. Nasabi seemed to think this was a good thing. He was laughing, giggling. But when he took the blindfold off, he found out he'd been taken to Korea.
で、じゃあ泊まるとこに。
When I got off on the other side in Korea, I took off the mask and they said, "Congratulations, you've achieved your $10,000. This is your reward. You get to have a trip in Korea." So I got to do a little sightseeing that day, and I thought, wow, that was a long thing. Boy, what I've been through. But then when at the end of the day, they took me back to my room, and there was the exact same room set up in the exact same way.
They'd recreated his little apartment, complete with the magazines, the stuffed seal, the postcards, exactly how he'd left it, except in Korea. And they told him, great, now all you have to do is start over and win your airfare back home.
This was just like somebody just had pulled the floor out from under me, and I just fell. I didn't know that humans could be that cruel.
Did you feel like you were going insane?
ではないです。もう完全だから無感情ですね。無気力。
If anything, the opposite of insane. I lost all energy. It's like somebody had just like sucked the life out of me. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to breathe. I didn't want to move a muscle. I had reached the end. I was finished. I told the producer that I wouldn't do it. I refused. And we went back and forth for quite a while, actually. But in the end, kudos to his skill as a negotiator, I did give in and do the last section of it.
Why did you do it? What did he say that actually convinced you to do it?
Well, it was just I got exhausted, if anything. I mean, he wasn't leaving. I couldn't just sort of get up and storm out. I had made no preparations for being in Korea. And at the end, I just said, yeah, whatever. And so I continued.
After all, he was naked with no money in another country. If you watch the clip, the producers just tell him he's trapped, show him looking shocked, and cut away. The studio audience laughs. Nasby continued his writing routine for 4 more months. And then the final episode aired. Picture it. The producers sneak into Nasby's room and blindfold him again, dress him, drive him to another location. They release him in yet another bare room, and he sighs and instinctively takes off all his clothes. Then, suddenly, all 4 of the walls around him fall down. That's him screaming. Turns out, he is on stage in a huge studio in Japan, in front of an enormous audience. Nasby, congratulations on your goal! Nasby looks horrified. 2 television hosts cautiously approach him and talk to him like a baby, telling him congratulations. Nasby says, frightened, my house fell down, and there's all these people here. It's finally over, presses the host. You're finished. Nasby should be happy, but he looks thoroughly weirded out. Remember, Nasby didn't even know he was being broadcast. The producers told him that it was an experiment, that they didn't know if he'd ever make it on air. So he's blown away when they tell him about the TV show, that a secret camera in his apartment once even broadcast a 24-hour live stream of his actions. They tell him his diaries were published and are bestsellers. Clips from him enjoying a specific brand of ramen turned into commercials and endorsement deals. He was on the cover of magazines. Then they play a bunch of clips from the show. Nasby blinks. He says, did I do that? That was me?
And so I sat there realizing that this new sort of life was, I was no longer just a nobody. I was the entire nation had been watching me for 15 months. And, to be honest, I thought, well, what the hell's, what is my country coming to? I mean, I was, very happy that, my journey was not for nothing. But it's still weird.
Unsurprisingly, Nasby left the show with some scars. He had a lot of trouble holding a conversation for 6 months, and he felt sweaty and uncomfortable in clothes for a year. And his role didn't help his comedy career like he'd hoped. He was mostly offered roles that required him to be goofy and naked. He's a D-list celebrity now, and has the dwindling bank account to match. In talking to him, it felt like he's really worked hard to turn that traumatic experience into a positive story he tells himself. He even says he's thankful for the experience.
It was, I don't want to overstate it, but it was kind of meditative in a way. You know, I had a lot of time to think about my life and a lot of time to think about a lot of stuff.
That certainly is a very zen way to look at it.
Well, I mean, it's 10 some years since I did that project, and after that everything has been much easier, much better. You know, I mean, obviously I'm able to deal with things. I see things happening, or I see situations around myself, and I think that's nothing like what I went through in that apartment.
And people still remember him. That's more than one could say for most of the other Denpa Shonen characters. None of them lasted as long as Nasby, or became as famous. The show ended in 2002, after its ratings began to drop.
I came out of the whole thing, you know, in a sense with the very best of possible results. A lot of people, you know, were not so fortunate. There were terrible things that happened related to the show.
One contestant on Denpa Shonen almost died of dehydration while trying to hitchhike across Africa. Some people were starved until they completed various challenges.
There's a sign over there that says
Another man
United
was
States
forced to go into a gay
Exit
club in
22.
Australia and
That's
offered
the exit
condoms to men
We're
until he was
supposed to take.
assaulted. The video cuts out, but you can hear him scream. And the mastermind behind all this? The producer of the show, the guy who convinced Nasby to keep going in Korea, his name was Toshio Tsuchiya. Back in the 90s, he was considered the king of Japanese reality TV. Last year, 14 years after Sweepstakes Life ended, Tsuchiya called Nasby, who wasn't thrilled to hear from him at first.
I had some, you know, let's say mixed feelings about him, a little resentment maybe. Yeah, I kept my distance for a very long time. And then, actually, just last year, he got in touch with me, and apparently it sort of came to his attention that maybe he had, you know, put people through maybe more than they deserved. And so he invited me to dinner, and he spent the evening sort of explaining why he did what he did, and apologizing. I think we pretty much came to terms, and I welcome the opportunity to work with him again, certainly, you know.
Wow, you would work with him again. That's really... that's shocking. And what was his reason for putting you through what he did?
He wanted something that would move people. And you don't get that out of just sort of somebody, you know, playing around. He wanted to see something real. He wanted to pull miracles out of people, and he wanted to